right, welcome back to the next episode, episode 21 of the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, Ryan Moore, and it's been about a month since the last recording, and there's a reason for that. There's a couple things. First off, I have a new podcast that I host with my friends Eric, Brady, and Jeff called The Cool Kids Club. And what this is basically a podcast about us watching terrible movies because Jeff and Brady, I love them to death, but oh my gosh, they like to watch bad movies. And over the years of our friendship, basically we have had to endure watching these bad movies. And so I started a podcast with them so that we can start recording kind of our discussions about these bad movies that we're kind of forced to watch. So basically the tester episode 0, is up right now on all the podcast catchers, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher. So go ahead, check that out. It is called the Cool Kids Club. And it is something that I've wanted to do for a while, and I finally got around to actually getting them to record an episode with me. So that was really fun. And we got a really, really bad movie that I came across back in November or December. And I was just like, man, we got to record a podcast and watch this movie because it looks bad. So that will be the first episode. Hopefully that will be up in the next coming weeks. But as for me and the Game or Die podcast, I've got a lot of stuff to talk about. I've been really busy. It's our busy time of the year for work. And so I haven't had a whole lot of time to play games, but in my downtime, I have played a little bit. And also I have watched a few movies because I've been on the road. I've been traveling a little bit. And so I do have some downtime where I don't want to play games, but I'll definitely watch something. And so I've been watching a lot of stuff. And there's a few things that I want to talk about first before I get into games. One of the first movies that I watch, I love documentaries. It's like one of my favorite genres of film is documentaries. I love learning. I love knowledge. It's part of my job as well as to teach and train people on certain skills. And so I like delving into a aspect of something that I don't know very well and going deep and not just scratching the surface. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that scratches the surface, especially on YouTube. You'll get these YouTube videos where they will kind of come off as a documentary and they'll copy and paste, a Ken Burns style or something like that. But they just talk about a lot of the very basic things of the subject, some stuff that most people already have an idea of, especially if you're going down into a niche category like video games, let's say. You'll see these YouTube videos where they'll be about 15 minutes long, and they just talk about the same stuff over and over again. I watched a video on Super Mario Brothers 2, and they talked about how it was called Doki Doki Panic. And it's like, yeah, everyone knows that at this point. And it's not even called Doki Doki Panic. It's called something else, Doki Doki Panic. But I mean, it's just one of those things where so many people just give you the bare minimum information. And I don't like that. So for me, I try and find some better documentaries, some ones that will delve deep into the subject matter. And one of the first ones that I watched a couple weeks ago was called Making Waves, and it's subtitled Sound in Cinema. And what this is basically, it goes through how music and sound effects were created and have changed throughout the history of film. And it was pretty good. It wasn't amazing. I've seen some really, really good movie documentaries as of late. But this was one of the better-ish ones, I guess. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was definitely worth watching. When I had some downtime, I just was sitting home and I was just kind of bored and I didn't really want to play any games or anything like that. So I sat down and I threw this documentary on. It came out a couple of years ago, I believe. And it's pretty cool. They go a little bit more in depth into Star Wars. And yeah, Star Wars was a big deal for cinema and film in the history of it, and sound effects, because they created a lot of their own sound effects. And they go through how lightsabers and the lasers were fashioned by hitting power lines and things like that, like the tension poles and the cabling. So, and they talk about how like Chewbacca's roar was combined with a couple different animals, and it's really interesting. But I just wish they didn't like. There's a good like 30 to 40 minutes of just dedication to Star Wars. And I wish they would have gone through a little bit more. But there was some really cool stuff. They talk about how Barbra Streisand actually created stereo film because when she was recording one of her movies and she was directing it, and I didn't even know that. I didn't know she directed like Yenta and stuff like that. And so she was performing and directing in her own movie. And she said the music wasn't good enough, and so she wanted to record it in stereo. And that is how stereo audio in films, everything was just mono back then until she came along and she started doing it. And I can't remember if she won an Academy Award for it or not, but it was really interesting to hear about some of the stuff you just don't see all that often anymore. Like I said, the Star Wars stuff, everyone knows that. Why cover it in greater detail when it's already been covered a billion times? So that was a good one. It was called Making Waves, the Sound in Music. And then one that I had a really tough time with this one. And the reason why is it's not a bad movie. It's actually phenomenal. It's one of the better documentaries that I've seen in the last several years. Is called Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s. And the reason why I had a difficult time with this movie was because I forgot about it. It was a Kickstarter film, came out last year, and I had it in the back of my mind. I had it in a notepad saying every once in a while, remind myself, hey, go check it. This movie's available. And I couldn't find it. I searched on the internet forever and no one uploaded it. And so I was kind of bummed. And so I actually shelled out some cash for this movie to download it, digitally download and throw it on my Plex server. So I actually own this movie. And this is the first time I bought a movie in, decades. Pretty much since the last time I worked at Best Buy when I had my Best Buy employee discount. It was when I used to buy just tons and tons and tons of movies. And so I basically wanted to watch this movie for so long, couldn't find it. So I pulled out, my card, bought it online, got the digital download, encoded it and threw it on my Plex server. And while I was out of town, I watched this documentary on ska. Now, if you don't know me, one of my favorite genres is ska. It's something that was kind of my own personal first genre of music that I really got into. When I was younger, like everyone pretty much, you listen to the music that your parents listen to because you're young, you don't have your own albums or records or CDs. Back in the day, now everything's just all digital. But when I was younger, I didn't really listen to any music outside of, at the time it was 80s and early 90s classic rock. And maybe some church music. And that was pretty much it. That was music for me for a long, long time. My first album was a movie score. And that was because it was Jurassic Park, because I loved Jurassic Park when that came out. And so that was my first CD. But everything after that, it was like, oh man, I remember going and listening to ska for the first time. I was at a youth group summer camp basically for like a week or two. I can't remember how long, but it was so eye-opening to hear other people listen to different types of music that I was never, brought up with. Ska was horns and so catchy and upbeat. And I was like, man, this is so cool. And so I started listening to, because it was church, there was that whole third generation wave of ska that got really picked up by Orange County, because that's where I lived. And everyone was in a ska band. There was so many ska bands at that time. So Orange County Supertones, Five Iron Frenzy, all these bands that I started listening to, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, all this stuff. Just I was brought up with. My cousin had No Doubt CDs, and No Doubt, they moved away from ska, but man, their first album is actually totally ska. And so it's really interesting to for me to be able to finally see a really good documentary on a genre of music that doesn't really get talked about anymore. And they actually do that in the very beginning. They do like a man on the street asking just people in New York, hey, have you ever heard of ska? And people are like, what's that? And they talk about some bands. Some people are like, I've never heard of those before. But what's really cool about this documentary is it does showcase a lot of, those third generation ska bands. They have a lot of people. And this is the thing too, is I learned new stuff because I didn't know the Aquabats were originally a ska band. I didn't know that Travis Barker from, Blink-182 was the drummer for Aquabats before he went into Blink. So I learned a lot. And what's really cool about this documentary is at the very beginning, after they do it's like just about a 2-minute long session of Man on the Street. Hey, do you know about ska? Have you heard of these ska bands before? They go into like this animated featurette of about 15 minutes about how ska was born and created back in Jamaica in the 1950s, late 50s, early 60s, and how these people took music that they were getting from overseas off the airwaves and created their own genre. And it morphed into that, fast or upbeat dance music that ska is known for, as opposed to reggae, which is basically slowed down ska. And it was really, really interesting. It's very unique, very informative. And it's also long, too. I hate documentaries that are like an hour long. Like, I just don't think you can get that much stuff done. All that information crammed into like an hour and 10 minutes. So they go above and beyond. They really do go through a lot of the history of ska and these bands that were coming out and the struggles they went through, and the high points and the low points. And what's really interesting too is one of the low points of ska is they were doing all these concerts all the time, and everyone was a ska band, and all that music is so upbeat and energetic that you would have these, hour, 2, 3 hour long concerts, and people are so energized at the very beginning. By the time the main headliner band came out, everyone was exhausted and didn't even want to, participate in the concert experience because everyone was just so drained of energy because it's high energy all the time. And it's really funny too, because I felt the same way watching the documentary. It starts off high energy. It, keeps progressing and progressing and progressing and progressing. And at the point where they start talking about the fatigue of it, I felt fatigued. And it was really interesting. And the documentary kind of took a dive into a more somber, mellow tone, if you want to call it that. And it was really, really interesting. So I would highly, highly suggest spending the money. I think it was $14. Like I said, I don't spend money on movies all that much anymore. We very rarely ever go see a movie in the theater because I don't think it's worth it. But if you are interested in ska or music or documentaries at all, at any point, this is one of the best music documentaries I've watched in a long, long time. If you want another really cool documentary, I'll say probably the one that always sticks out, a music documentary, is the Jeff Lynne from ELO. The documentary is called Mr. Blue Sky because ELO, Mr. Blue Sky. If you're familiar with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, that's the first song that they play in that movie. But Jeff Lynne is a musical genius. He really is. I don't throw that word around lightly. It is one of the best documentaries I've ever watched. I learned so much from that documentary. So if you want a good couple documentaries, pick it up. Ska in the 90s, just Google it, you'll find it. Or also Mr. Blue Sky, the story of Jeff Lynne and ELO. Those are fantastic documentaries. So that's kind of the main movies that I've been watching lately. And then Elizabeth and I actually started going through from season 1 and binge watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is really fun because I've been watching it on my own since it aired back in 2013. And I love that show, but it's been on for 7 years now at this point. They just started their 7th season. And for whatever reason, we were kind of just flipping through stuff to watch. And I was just like, man, you would really like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She goes, all right. And so I put it on and she fell in love with it. She really likes that show. She says it's super funny. And so I'm glad that we can actually watch a new show again together. It's been a little bit here because, there's just not that much interesting stuff on TV anymore. So having and being able to watch her watch it for the first time and just see some of the stuff that I missed, maybe my first viewing experience, is great too. She'll point out things and go, man, I never even realized that. So that's fun, man. I love that show. I'm really excited for this new season as well. So that's pretty much what I've been watching. What I've been playing is kind of a lot of weird older stuff. Because man, last year sucked for new game releases, but this year so far we're at the kind of near the end of February. It's the 21st of February, and we've got about a week left in the month, and literally nothing has come out. Nothing at all has come out in the first 2 months of this year, and it sucks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been playing. And what I've been playing is basically, I finished up the Spyro trilogy, the Reignited trilogy, and I loved it. I am so bummed that I can't go back and play it for the first time. It's one of those games that I love so much that I actually want to replay it, even though I just finished it. It very, very, very rarely ever happens. I never go back and replay a game when I finish it. The only times I do is years afterwards when it's kind of gone out of my, short-term memory and I don't remember every single thing about it. But man, Spyro, that's a special type of game. It is incredible how well it's made, how well the team did revamping all the graphics, and just learning how those games move and played and felt. It was really, really fun. So I went back to the other the other trilogy that came out by that team, by Activision, and I can't remember if Toys or Bob did the Crash games too, but they did the Crash Bandicoot trilogy, the one that came out a couple years ago. I lost my game save, which was a bummer because I was a good 75% of the way through the first game, and man, I don't remember those games being that hard. And I remember when those games, the new trilogy came out, there was a lot of chatter on the internet about, why is these games so hard? I don't remember these games being so hard. What's up with the difficulty? And it's because the physics are changed a little bit. They're tweaked a little bit. And so these games, these newer versions of these games are brutal and unforgiving. And I had a very, very unenjoyable time playing most of them. I finished all 3 of them, but it took a long time, and I was super pissed when I lost my game save because that was 2 to 3 hours of progress that I just lost, and I had to redo it again, and I didn't, and it was several years ago or a couple years ago that I played it when it first came out on PC. And so I did not have the muscle memory and remembering where all the enemies are, and there's the windows in the timing of these jumps and these enemy placements are near pinpoint accuracy that you just try over and 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 over again to just pass a single enemy. You just keep dying over and over again, and it becomes tedious and exhausting and frustrating. And there is definitely times where I just said, "Screw this! I'm not playing this anymore," and I would drop it for a while, a day or two, and then come back to it. So they were really basically too hard to enjoy. Is kind of my opinion on it. I had at the beginning of the game, and I didn't die for several times. There was basically this section of area where I didn't die, a couple levels, and it was great. And I accumulated about, I want to say it was about 44 lives, extra lives. And I didn't have any game overs. I got to this one area. And yeah, maybe a level or two, I'd die once or twice. And I was like, this isn't that bad. I don't remember. I remember it being harder than this. And then I got to this one point in the first game that I struggled with the first time I got to it. And I was like, oh, that's right, this part. I lost all 44 lives on one single level, on one single jump, because of the placement of the enemy turtle that you have to jump on or jump over or whatever. I can't even remember at this point. Died, lost all my lives, had to continue over, start with 3, died, did a game over, did it again, and got 0 lives. And on my last life of almost the third continue, I finally finished the level. And I was just mad. I was really pissed off that I wasted all my lives on something so trivial. A single stinking jump was so frustrating for me to basically lose everything. And, I progressed through the game, but at that moment, I basically wasn't having fun anymore. And I hate played through that game pretty much. And the second one, because I never played through the first game, and I didn't play the second game at all, but I played the third game originally when it came out. I had it. I got it as a Christmas present. And I had a lot of fun with the third game. So that's kind of what tainted my or changed my opinion of the Crash games coming into this new trilogy. I was like, well, the third one's really fun. So the first two might not be as good, but they're going to be probably the same. So I played through the Crash games. I played through one. It took several hours. It took about 5-6 hours, I want to say. I always keep a list of what games I finish and beat and how long it takes, what day I beat them on and how long it takes me to beat them. So it took me several hours. I went to the next game. I was excited to get into it. I'm like, maybe they just ironed out all the bugs. No, the second game is so far and above more frustrating, more difficult, and unenjoyable. The level designs suck. They're not fun. They're tedious. They're boring. It's a bad game. The second Crash game is definitely the worst. So I finished that up a couple days later, and then I went to Crash 3. And this is the thing, after Crash 1, the boss fights in Crash 1 are pretty difficult because most of the time with Crash games, you only have one hit kill. If you get touched or you touch something that you're not supposed to, or if an enemy touches you at all, you die, period. You can have the Aku Aku mask, and that's pretty cool, but you only get that if you find it in a level. And again, it's one-time use type of thing. You get hit, it goes away forever until you find another one. Or you die so many times the game just says, fine, screw it, whatever. Here's an extra mask. But the the boss fights in Crash 1 are difficult. Boss fights in Crash 2 and 3 are literally a cakewalk. I didn't even die on any of them. I think I died on the gangster raccoon or rodent one in Crash 2, but that was it. Final boss fight, Totally didn't die. Beat it first time. All of the boss fights in the other Crash 3 didn't die at all. Piece of cake. It was ridiculous. So I got to Crash 3 after I finished Crash 2, and I was like, all right, this is the one I remember loving. And they basically do these hub worlds where you can just pick and choose which game you want to get through, or which level you want to play, sorry. And when you're playing through these levels, they all have a different, unique style or characteristic or theming, basically. And the hub world kind of represents that. It's a spoke design, wheel and spoke, where you actually have the middle area, which is kind of nothing, and then you have these spokes that go out into different hubs or level areas, kind of like Disneyland. If you've ever been in Disneyland, you have the main center, Main Street, and then everything kind of flows outwards. You have Adventureland, Main Street, Tomorrowland, Frontierland, New Orleans Square, Critterland, or whatever. And this is how the layout of the hub world is designed. It's very small, but you have your medieval castle. You have your Chinese, Great Wall of China area. You have the Arabian area. You have the pirate beach area. And all these levels you would think are themed to that. But no, it's just the area that you walk towards to open up the levels. Every level is mishmashed together in these hub worlds. So in the hub world of Area 1, it should be medieval themed. So the first level is medieval themed. You get to the second area of that world, and it's prehistoric themed. And you go, okay, that's a little weird, but whatever. They have dragons in medieval theme. Maybe that's it. No, it's like 100 million year BC. Dinosaurs are inhabiting the level. Then you go to the next one. It's Arabian themed. Then you go to the next one. It's pirate themed. And you just go, wait, what? It makes no sense. And that really bummed me out because, like I said, with the Spyro games, they were so well designed. Everything flowed together. You went to a world. You went to an ice world or area, the levels in that area flowed with the area of the world that you were in. So it just has a stark contrast between the two, the Insomniac game design versus the Naughty Dog game design. And yeah, this is back, 25 plus years at this point to where Crash was a very basic game, and Naughty Dog has knocked it out of the park with like the Uncharted series and Last of Us and stuff. But back then, man, comparing Crash and Spyro, it just made me want to play Spyro again even more after playing through the Crash games. I hated it. There's a couple vehicle levels too. One where your sister is riding a tiger. That was kind of fun on the Great Wall of China. She's riding a jet ski. Crash has a motorcycle in the third game, and that's kind of cool. But like I said, just the difficulty ramps, they're so inconsistent. I blazed through Crash 3 in one basic sitting. But at one point, I didn't die for several levels, and then the one biker level I had, you have to get first place, and you have to memorize that level. So it took me like 4 or 5 tries to get through this one level, and I was always missing the mark by just a split hair fraction of a percentage. Every time I was neck and neck with the other racer, second first, and I got second. So I had to restart the entire level over again, and it sucked. So I kind of hated my time playing through the Crash games. I will never play those games ever again. I finished them. I got the crystals for them, but I am not doing time trials. I'm not 100%ing any of those levels ever in my life. It is a waste of my time. And it's just a bummer too, because those games I remember being really fun, but this new remaster trilogy just makes them so much more unenjoyable. They look nice, but holy crap, they suck. So That was the Crash trilogy, and then I needed kind of a palate cleanser a little bit, and I was just like, man, I don't know what to play. So I went through and I played a little bit of Division 2 again, since that was my second favorite game of the year that I played last year. And they got some new, they have some new DLC that they've been putting out over the year. And then they have this expansion pass that they're promoting that comes out on the 3rd of March of this year. And with that, they've been doing a special sale. Division 2 on all platforms right now until March 3rd or March 2nd is $3. $3 freaking dollars to play this huge, massive game. And it is so stinking fun that I double dipped. I bought it on an extra console just because it was $3 and I want to be able to make sure that I can play with my friends if I want to. And I bought the expansion pass too. So I was like, $33, whatever, and now I have that, and I'm so excited to play more of that game. I played a little bit last night again. I've been just playing like a level or a round or, just going through an area and just falling in love with that game again. It is so fun. I'm not a big loot shooter type of person. I don't care the types of guns or gear that I get. If it's a higher number, I'll equip it really quick so that I'm better prepared for the fights, but I'm not wasting any amount of time in those menus, debating, is this good or is this good? I'm sticking with guns that I've had for, 15 hours playing through because they are better than everything that I'm picking up in my mind. Maybe they're not, depending on the play style, but like I said, I'm just enjoying that game. I'm not taking it too seriously because I already finished the main campaign, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. I want to play a little bit more Red Dead. The pass for it is coming up to finish here in just a couple of weeks, or maybe about a week or so. And I want to finish getting that pass leveled up. It's the first time I did it. I did it on the, on the Xbox version before the PC version came out. But now having to level up my character again and putting several hundred hours into the PC version the last couple of months, I'm kind of a little burnt out on it. I literally just picked it up and played before I started recording. And I was just like, what am I doing? I don't want to do any of this stuff. I've done it 100 times and I'm just not having fun. So I'm not gonna force myself to play that game. I'll pick it up when I want to. If I miss out on some stuff, hey, whatever, no big deal. So that's kind of mainly the things that I've been playing. But every once in a while, I do get this bug in me that I want to play a series. And for whatever reason, the series that popped up into my head that I want to go through the series was the Dave Mirra games. If you remember back on the original PlayStation, back in the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s, there was the whole big extreme sports craze. Tony Hawk kicked it off, and then you had a bunch of clones of Tony Hawk. You had games like Grind Session and Street Skater and games like that. And I was just like, oh man, I want to play a type of Thrasher Skate and Destroy. And so I wanted to replay all these games. And so I picked up Dave Mirra because it was the BMX game. And it had these ragdoll physics that felt very similar to Thrasher Skate and Destroy, which I found out later on was made by the same development team. Or production house, basically. And so it had a lot of the same DNA, basically, of that original game. And I love Thrasher Skate and Destroy. So I picked up Dave Mirra. And I remembered how much I loved that game in high school. It has really great soundtracks. It's got some songs that I'm not super... I don't super care for. I don't like Sublime at all as a band. And they're in that ska documentary too, which was funny. I was like, oh yeah, that's Sublime with ska. That's right. I'm not a big fan of Sublime. That's the first song that you hear when you start the game up. But after that, it's not a big deal. There's some really good songs in there. There's some Deftones in there as well. And the level designs are really fun. They're very small, very, very small levels, but you have a really fun trick system. The physics are a little wonky, but they're really, really enjoyable. And just hitting the ground, you hear those thuds and whacks when Dave hits the ground, or Ryan Nyquist, or any other characters that you play as. It's just funny. I remember enjoying myself playing through those games in high school, and I'm replaying them and I'm finishing these games, and I have a better understanding of how trick systems works and modifiers work now. So the objectives aren't that difficult until you get to the later levels. And I really, 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 really enjoyed this game. So I would highly suggest playing some older games that you might remember from your childhood, because I picked up that game, I bet it went through it, and then what happened was I never played this, but they put out kind of like a weird remix pack. It's called Dave Mirra's Freestyle BMX, which is the name of the first game, semicolon, Maximum Remix. And they added a couple new levels, and they added all the old levels from the first game, but tweaked the objectives and made different objectives for these levels. And I was like, well, I got to play that. If I'm going to play the first one and the second one, I got to play the one in between. So this is kind of modernizing this game. If you want to think about it in a modern way, it's like the Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 remix game. It takes all the original game, but adds some stuff into it, changes a little bit of stuff about it. And I was kind of bummed because I forgot about it until I finished Dave Mirra 1, and then I went, oh, that's right, there's the remix. I wish I would have just played through the remix as the first game, because it's pretty much the exact same with more stuff. And you have to complete all those original levels just again. And I was just like, ugh, I don't want to do that. It's going to dampen my mood on this game, my feeling about this game. And that's exactly what it did. Some of the level objectives became so freaking difficult right out of the gate that playing without an emulator, makes it super tedious. Even with an emulator, starting and restarting save state load, because you have to line these things up so spot on that you will have an extremely difficult time just hitting one objective. And it takes you, 30 seconds to 45 to a minute just to get back set up so that you can try it again. And you only have 2 minutes to complete the objective. And so trying it, there's some things that I had to try 50 or 60 times before I got the right angle, the right physics locked into place, and I didn't hit some weird curb or angle that made me crash. It became so much more unenjoyable that I was just like, man, I forgot a lot of these games have really good core mechanics to them, but everything else around it, the objectives and stuff, just become so tedious and boring and unenjoyable. So I played through a little bit of Maximum Remix. I didn't finish it. I played through most of the game. I didn't get to like one or two different things, and one or two different levels. And I just really had an extremely hard time with that game, so that I dropped it. And then I moved on to Dave Mirra 2. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2. I remember playing this, years ago on the Xbox. I think probably around 2005 or 6, after it came out. And I was like, modding Xboxes. The 360 was out at that time, and I just went back, to my original modded Xbox, and I played Dave Mirra 2 going, oh man, I never got to play this when it came out. And it's a lot of the same, but the levels are way, way bigger. Kind of too big, in fact. Unfortunately, the levels are so big that it takes you so much longer to get to an area. And it's kind of cool because it's more of almost a hub where you have people giving you objectives, but it's not that much from what I've seen. And I've completed like hardcore, like the amateur objectives, the pro objectives, and the hardcore objectives, just like in the original game. And I still haven't really seen why those people are there for the most part. They just basically are there to give you a secret objective that once you talk to them once, you never have to deal with them ever again. So the levels are bigger, which is good, but just a little bit too big. You have a longer time limit of 3 minutes this time. You got new songs, which I think are a much better uh, feeling for the game that they're trying to make. You had Sublime, you had Deftones, and then you had some punk rock songs. They mix it up. There's some rap, there's some R&B, there's some hard rock, there's classic rock in there for some reason, and you get some really good songs in this game. But like I said, the game is too big for its own good. The objectives become extremely boring and unenjoyable as well. Just like the first game, where as you progress, and I haven't finished this game yet because I got to a point where I got to these levels where they're not just asking you to get a certain score. You're getting a certain score in a trick combo. Then you're getting an area where you have to create, or you have to pull off a certain special move. And these moves are not really... I'm a button masher when it comes to these types of games. I know roughly what I'm doing, but I mash a lot of buttons and spin and just kind of try and do a trick that looks cool that's going to rack up a lot of points. That's the main objective of these games. They went into this whole thing where you need to get into this pool area and you need to do a specific thing over a specific area. So you have one little section where you have to pull off a transfer from a pool to another pool over a fence. But you don't even just have to do the transfer from the pool to another pool over a fence, but you also have to do a backflip tail whip while you're transferring. And that took me about 40 minutes to do. I just finished it a little bit ago, and I saved the game and I put it down. I'm just like, I'm done. I can't have fun with this anymore when you're just asking me to do a specific trick in a specific area. And those tricks are not the easiest to pull off because you're doing, bottom right down square or B or X or whatever you want to call it. And you're having to spin, but you're also having to transfer over. So you're having to hold up, and you can't hold up and jump, and the physics engine isn't great. So sometimes you just jump, sometimes you jump up, sometimes you go vertical, sometimes you just crash and bail out for no reason. So it's just gotten kind of tedious to the point where I don't want to do it anymore. I don't know if I'm going to finish this game. Just like with Maximum Remix, I'm just not having fun anymore. And I'm kind of a big proponent of, if you're not having fun, why are you playing it? So I put that down for the time being. I might finish it later on. I might take a step back, play some other stuff and then come back to it. But in my time of playing Dave Mirra 2 the last 2 days, I got home yesterday from work. I played through a little bit of it. And then last night I hit that wall. I hit that time where I was just like, I'm not having fun. I gotta just stop for a while. I picked up Thrasher Skate and Destroy because, again, all the time while I'm playing these Dave Mirra games, I'm remembering Thrasher Skate and Destroy was kind of the core concept of these games. It was the starting point, the DNA basis of these games. So I picked that up and I had a blast. The music is fantastic. The control scheme is so different than Tony Hawk or Dave Mirra or, any of those types of games. It's very, very, very methodical. And you can almost see elements of that game, that Thrasher Skate and Destroy type of mindset, in games like Skate, which takes a totally different approach. You're not building up crazy runs and billions of points. You're hopefully getting like 5,000 points at the start of the first level. You don't just jump 25 feet in the air and then automatically lock into a grind. You are having to think about this. And what's really cool too is this game, it puts you in a level with a character that you create. And when you start the level, you don't have a timer immediately. you can get to where you want to go before you start the clock, before you start your run that your score accumulates to. You basically have a practice of the entire level until you hit the select button. Once that changes, everything is now counting. And the time's counting down, the score is counting up. And what's really cool is at the end of the run, at the end of the timer, when your timer runs out, you have a life meter too. And when your time meter runs out, a cop comes after you, which is really fun. And the cop chases you down in a first person. So you are skating your character, but the camera is pulled back into the first person character point of view for the cop chasing you. So you got to be on your toes and you got to take your time, and you can do extra tricks if you haven't built up that amount that you need to finish the level with. You can do tricks in front of the cop to actually get the score higher than it normally would be. And then you got to reach the exit as well, or get the cop to lose pursuit by going faster than he can run. So there's multiple elements at play within this game that don't show up anywhere else in any other game. And it was a fantastic game. And I remember telling people at the time too, when that game came out, Tony Hawk's rad. I remember loving the crap out of Tony Hawk. But when Thrasher came out, I was like, dude, this game is just as good in a different way. So that was really, really fun to play through last night. And I finished the game. It took me 2 hours maybe. I can't remember. But it was super enjoyable. It's a super fun game. I remember having so much fun with my friend Brendan. I would spend the night at his house on a Friday or Saturday night, and we would just play this game over and over again. They got some really good songs in there. A lot more rap, too. 90s rap, you got A Tribe Called Quest in there. You got Sugar Hill Gang, which I remember as a kid just loving. When I was in high school, I loved that song. Yes, it's boring and dumb and stupid at this point, but man, even hearing it last night, I had a big smile on my face while I was playing that game. It didn't feel tedious. It didn't feel like it was going way harder than it needed to be. It was just more about the fun enjoyment of the controls. So I've been on this weird, extreme sports kick. And also another game that I've been playing in my meantime when I've come home from being out of town and on the weekend, and I sit down and go, oh man, I don't really want to play any story heavy based thing right now. I've been picking up Steep that came out several years ago on the Uplay store. Ubisoft created it. And it's snowboarding, skiing, winter sports. And I think I got it free on Humble Bundle, or very cheap on Humble Bundle or something, kind of like the original Division. And so I was like, well, I already own this game, so I might as well play it. And I've been playing that off and on, and it's pretty fun. But again, it's one of those things where you're doing the Tony Hawk thing. You're starting, stopping, and replaying a section over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you get in your own mind about it. I know I do anyways, where I get in my own mind about this whole section that I need to get perfect. And if I would have just stopped and played the level, I might have gotten the correct score to pass or get a medal without having to restart it 15 or 20 times. So, I mean, maybe it's just because I grew up playing the Tony Hawk games and learning that start down X to restart the level immediately. You start the game, and within the first second, you try and jump and do a flip trick and then manual, and you bail out. Instead of waiting for your character to get it back up and just continue on, and you've lost 4 seconds out of the run, you immediately restart. That's what I do, and I kind of hate that about myself sometimes. But, that's how we did it when those games were coming out. We were trying to get the best score possible, and if you mess up right away, you're doing it again all over. So I've been playing a lot of games here and there, just sporadically throughout the last month or so. A weekend, playing just through a crap ton of stuff, and then not playing anything for 5 or 6 days. That's just kind of how my life's been for the last couple of weeks here. It is exhausting. So, hopefully I got some new stuff to play. Nothing new is still coming out. I literally have no idea the next new thing that's going to come out that I'm going to get hooked on. That's not an old game, something I don't already own, because there's nothing coming out and it freaking sucks. Listening to gaming podcasts and hearing all the news stuff and just going, yep, still nothing really to talk about. It's the same old garbage. It's a bummer. So I think that's going to do it for the end of this podcast. I wanted to just talk a little bit and, get an episode recorded because, like I said, I've been playing a little things here and there for the last month or so. And I don't want to go super, super long. I don't want it to be every month that I release a new episode, but sometimes just because of work and things like that, that's how it goes. This podcast is for fun. It's not making any money. It's not monetized. I'm not doing monetization. I'm not trying to build up a fan base or anything like that. I'm doing it for fun. And if you want to listen, I hope you really enjoy it because I really like talking about video games. If you want to get in touch at all, you can always contact me at themadman007 on Twitter. You can write me at podcast@gameordie.net or ryan@gameordie.net. Get a hold of me there. And also, like I said, if you want to listen to my friends and I talk about terrible movies, The Cool Kids Club is our new podcast that I've created with my friends Jeff, Eric, and Brady. And we have a lot of fun. We've got some really terrible movies lined up for us to watch. And hopefully, once we kind of get a flow going, after that first episode, we can kind of nail down a better release schedule for that. But hey, we're all in our mid to late 40s or 30s, and we've got families and spouses and lives outside of podcasting. This isn't our job. It's just for fun, Take all this stuff with a huge grain of salt whenever you listen to us talk about stuff, because we're just having fun. We're just having conversations. And that's what I think podcasting should be. So many people try to go into these hobbies and make a job out of them because of the gig economy or whatever. And it's like, not everything has to be about money, man. It's just do something because you like doing it. Don't make it a job. Don't make it a requirement. Like with my games like Dave Mirra, if I'm not enjoying it, why am I playing it? Just stop. It's okay to stop and not force yourself to do something you hate doing or force yourself to do something to make money off of everything. That's not what this podcast is about. That's not what my other podcast is about. I do it for fun. This is all in my free time for fun to get better at speaking into a microphone professionally for my job. This is something that I can do on my off time, not get paid for, and just have fun with it. So thank you very much for listening. Sorry I ramble on sometimes. Check out the Cool Kids Club podcast on all those podcast catchers, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher. Wherever you get your podcasts, I hope you can find this podcast and the Cool Kids Club. Also, I've been writing a lot, and I'm going to start uploading some more documents and articles and stories and just features and reviews, for games on gameordie.net, which is my website that this podcast is hosted there as well. So until next time, I am Ryan Moore signing off. Thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you next time.
Sunrise to sunset, I thought you'd be with me, but then you gave me one chance, and we'll dance one last dance, 'cause the music won't stop till it's